Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really getting into materia medica. We're focusing on a pretty unique remedy, Baptisia tinctoria.
That's right. Wild indigo.
Exactly, wild indigo. And in this deep dive, we want to unpack its special characteristics, the symptoms it covers, sort of get you really well informed on it.
And what strikes you immediately looking at the sources is its specific nature. Baptisia, it's often pointed to for what's called an asthenic type of symptom picture.
Asthenic, meaning like really weak, depleted.
Precisely. Profound weakness, lack of energy. It often mimics things like low fevers and especially septic conditions. That's a key area.
Septic conditions, okay.
And what's really striking is this description of great muscular soreness and putrid phenomena.
Putrid phenomena, what does that actually mean in this context?
Well, it means that basically all the body's secretions, breath, stool, urine, even sweat, they're described as being offensive. Really offensive. Yeah, it paints a picture of a kind of deep systemic breakdown. Like the body is struggling to maintain its integrity, almost disintegrating internally.
That's a powerful image, disintegration. And speaking of that, the thing that really jumped out at me, and I think will stick with you listening, is this really strange mental symptom.
Ah, yes, the divided personality idea.
Exactly. The source says the person thinks he is broken or double and tosses about the bed trying to get pieces together. That's, well, it's quite something, isn't it?
It absolutely is. It's one of the most memorable keynotes for Baptisia. It really captures that feeling of falling apart.
It feels almost metaphorical for the whole state.
It really does. And connecting to that deeper state, the source also mentions Baptisia's specific action. It seems to raise the natural bodily resistance against the kind of toxins, the bacillary intoxication that produce the typhoid syndrome.
So it's relevant in really serious infections like typhoid or typhoid-like states.
Yes. And it's even noted for typhoid carriers, interestingly, and its use after inoculation with anti-typhoid serum. So quite specific applications there.
Okay, so we have this core picture. Profound weakness, putridity, this feeling of being broken apart, and a link to severe infections. Let's unpack how this manifests across the body now, starting with the mind.
Right. Beyond that incredible broken feeling, the mind symptoms include a wild, wandering feeling. There's often an inability to think clearly.
Mental confusion?
Deep mental confusion, yes. And sometimes just perfect indifference, a real lack of engagement with anything.
And didn't the source mention falling asleep?
Yes, exactly. Someone who falls asleep while being spoken to, or even while answering a question, just completely zoning out.
That level of indifference is profound. How does this connect to the head symptoms?
Well, it flows right in. You see a confused swimming feeling in the head, vertigo. A feeling of pressure, often described at the root of the nose.
Like sinus pressure, almost? Sort of. But also this odd sensation that the skin of the forehead feels tight, or like it's being drawn to the back of the head.
Strange.
Very specific sensations. The head can also feel too large, heavy, numb. And there's soreness of eyeballs, the brain feels sore. Even early deafness and typhoid conditions is noted under head.
So, a real sense of internal pressure and soreness in the head. Does this translate to the person's appearance, like in their face?
It does. The face description is quite vivid. A besotted look is how it's put.
Sotted, like drunk.
Exactly. Almost like an intoxicated appearance. Often a dark red complexion, and the jaw muscles can be really rigid, tightly clenched.
That rigid jaw is interesting. Okay, let's move into the mouth. I saw a lot of detail there in the notes. What's going on?
Yeah, the mouth symptoms are very characteristic, tying back to that putrid theme we mentioned.
Okay.
So you get a flat, bitter taste. The teeth and gums are often sore, maybe ulcerated. And the breath is described as fetid.
Fetid meaning it really bad. Extremely offensive, yes. And the tongue is key here.
That
You feel burned.
Burned.
Yeah, or it might look yellowish brown with edges that are red and shiny. Or another look is dry and brown right down the center with the edges dry and glistening. Often cracked and sore too.
Very distinct appearances.
Very. And crucially, there's often extreme difficulty swallowing. The source says one can swallow liquids only, least solid food gags.
Just liquids, that's severe.
It highlights a real constriction or spasm happening. These fine details are what help differentiate Baptisia.
Right. And does that difficulty, that constriction, carry on down into the throat?
It does, yeah. The throat symptoms often show dark redness of tonsils and soft palate. There's that constriction, contraction of the esophagus again, leading to the great difficulty in swallowing solid food.
Makes sense.
And interestingly, it can sometimes be a painless sore throat.
Painless with all this going on.
Yes, which is quite telling, isn't it? It points to that deep level of prostration or nerve depression. Even with pathology, the pain response might be muted. There's also often an offensive discharge and even contraction at the cardiac orifice, the opening into the stomach.
That painless aspect is really something. It underscores that deep collapse. So, how does this play out in the stomach and abdomen?
Well, in the stomach, you again see it can swallow only liquids. There might be vomiting due to spasm of the esophagus, generally no appetite, but interestingly, a constant desire for water.
Thirsty, despite everything.
Yes. And a sinking feeling at the stomach, maybe pain in the epigastric region, that upper middle part of the abdomen, sometimes a sensation of a hard substance there. And it's noted symptoms can be worse from beer.
Okay. And the abdomen lower down.
The abdomen section highlights that the right side is markedly
The
affected.
right side specifically? Why is that?
It often points towards involvement of the liver and gallbladder area, which are on the right. You see distension, rumbling, and definite soreness over the region of the gallbladder with diarrhea.
Ah, okay.
And the stools themselves fit the picture. Very offensive, thin, dark, bloody. There's general soreness of the abdomen, especially in the region of the liver. It's noted for dysentery of old people, too.
Which often involves that kind of weakness and offensive discharge, right?
Exactly. It fits the overall pattern. Now, there are also some female-specific symptoms mentioned.
Right. What are those?
Things like threatened miscarriage, often linked to mental depression, shock, watching, or low fevers. Again, reflecting that underlying weakness and susceptibility.
Makes sense.
Menses might be too early, too profuse, and the lochia, the discharge after childbirth, can be acrid, fetid. It's also relevant in puerperal fever, which is a serious post-childbirth infection.
So even in these specific areas, that theme of sepsis, putridity, and profound weakness comes through clearly. What about breathing, the respiratory system?
Yeah, the respiratory symptoms are quite telling. The lungs can feel compressed. Breathing is difficult, labored. And there's often a strong desire and urge to seek an open window.
Gasping for air almost.
Feels like it. And there can be a real fear of going to sleep.
Fear of sleep. Why?
It's linked to nightmare and a sense of suffocation. Like they're afraid they'll stop breathing if they fall asleep. There's also a general constriction of the chest feeling.
Wow, that fear of suffocation really connects back to that overall sense of oppression. Okay, what about the back and extremities? More soreness.
Definitely. A tired feeling in the neck, stiffness, pain, aching and drawing pains in the arms and legs, pain in the sacrum, the lower back, and around the hips and down the legs.
And that general bruised feeling.
Yes, a pervasive feeling of being sore and bruised all over the body, and a tendency towards decubitus.
Decubitus, bed sores.
Exactly, which is a strong indicator of just how weak and immobile the person is in this state, a sign of severe prostration.
That really emphasizes the depth of the illness. Now, sleep disturbances. You mentioned nightmares, but what else?
Well, generally sleepless and restless, despite the exhaustion. Those nightmare and frightful dreams are common, and that mental symptom pops up again here.
The scattered feeling.
Yes, the source notes cannot get herself together, feels scattered about bed, often happens during attempts to sleep or upon waking. And of course, that tendency we mentioned earlier to fall asleep while answering a question.
It all ties together. What about the skin? Any specific signs there?
Yes, the skin can show livid spots all over body and limbs,
Livid spots like bruising or poor circulation.
indicating poor circulation and toxicity. Yes. There can also be a sensation of burning and heat in the skin, and in severe cases, putrid ulcers with stupor, low delirium, and prostration. Again, hitting that septic offensive theme.
Okay. And how does the fever itself typically present in a Baptisia case?
It's often a chill, but a chill accompanied by those rheumatic pains and soreness all over. Or it could be heat all over, maybe with occasional chills breaking through. There's a note about a specific chill time around 11 a.m.
Interesting.
But the main character of the fever is what's called adynamic,
Adynamic, meaning
meaning lacking power, lacking vital force. The body feels profoundly exhausted, like it can barely mount a proper fever response. This is typical of conditions like typhus fever or shipboard fever, severe toxic illnesses with extreme weakness.
got it. So, putting this all together, are there conditions that typically make Baptisia symptoms worse? The modalities?
Yes, the source material notes that symptoms are generally worse from humid heat, fog, indoors.
Okay, so closed in, heavy, damp environments exacerbate things.
Exactly. They seem to worsen that feeling of oppression and stagnation that characterizes the remedy.
Now, how does Baptisia compare to other remedies? Are there any key relationships mentioned?
Yes, a few comparisons are helpful. Remedies like bryonia and arsenic are mentioned as sometimes being needed to complete the favorable reaction. So they might follow Baptisia well.
Okay.
It's also distinguished from ailanthus. Ailanthus is described as generally more painful, whereas Baptisia, especially in its profound states, is often strikingly painless despite the severity.
That painless point again.
Right, it's a key differentiator. There's also a mention of something called Baptisia confusia, a related variety perhaps, with its own specific symptoms noted, like pain in right jaw and oppression in left hypochondrium, producing dyspnoea.
So, related but distinct.
Yes. These comparisons help practitioners really pinpoint the right remedy.
And finally, just briefly, what about the dose mentioned?
The source suggests tincture to 12th attenuation. For listeners, this refers to the homeopathic preparation method, resulting in highly diluted, energetic forms rather than a crude substance dose. It also mentions that Baptisia has a rather short action.
Meaning its effects might be powerful, but not necessarily very long lasting compared to some others.
Potentially, yes. It might need repeating or following up with another remedy.
Okay, so wrapping this up, if we distill the essence of Baptisia tinctoria from this deep dive, it's this incredible picture of deep physical collapse, right?
Absolutely. Prostration is key.
And those pervasive putrid secretions.
Unmistakable.
Coupled with that truly bizarre and specific mental state of feeling broken or double. It's a state of disintegration, really.
It is, and I think understanding these incredibly detailed symptom pictures like Baptisia's allows for a much more nuanced approach. It helps us see beyond just weakness or infection to the very specific way an individual is experiencing their illness.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? What does this focus on such distinct, sometimes really strange signals from the body? What does it tell us about how we perceive illness itself?
That's a great question. It really prompts us to consider. How might paying close attention to these very individual, precise details, the discomforts, the perceptions, even the bizarre thoughts, lead us to a deeper appreciation of the body's complex language? How it communicates distress in ways we might otherwise overlook. Maybe there's real value in learning to listen that closely.